Hey guys, Mike Mikowski here, man. Just checking in. Hope things are going well with you. I'm telling you what, this Oklahoma weather, it's 70 degrees right now in the last day of January. Not too bad. But I also heard that Minnesota's doing pretty good too. I heard that they're in the mid 40s. So, we're experiencing some pretty good weather, and that's awesome. But I just wanted to connect with you. It's been about a month since the basic in Luther Park in January. And at this point, I just want to share something about what's going on with me and what usually goes on with me after about 4 to 6 weeks of leaving a retreat. I find myself wavering a little bit. I don't know about you, and doubt is definitely trying to creep in. All right. So I'm waver a little bit. I'm starting to doubt maybe some of the things that God said for me to do. And so, it's an interesting thing, but that seems what happens to me about 4 to 6 weeks afterwards. And it's usually the questions from the enemy that cause me to waver and cause me to doubt. And to be truthfully honest with you, it's even questions that some people that are around me have maybe asked about the retreat, or have maybe said like, I haven't really seen much change, or, did this really happen to you? The questions of the enemy are something he's used from the beginning, you guys. And so I don't know about you, but at this point in time, if you're getting questions like, did God really say that? I mean, you sure that wasn't the pizza you ate at the retreat? Or did God really change you? I mean, come on, really? Did he really change you? Or this one, are you really free from fill in the blank? Did God really set you free from this? For me, this time, the question that has been coming to me is, did God really excite your heart toward your calling again? Because one of the things I wanted God to do at the retreat, at the basic, was to reignite my heart again, to set my heart on fire again about doing what I'm doing right now, a podcast to men and ministering and coaching and discipling men. I wanted that reignited, and God did it. I mean, he literally reignited that in my heart. So the enemy comes in with the question, did God really excite your heart towards your calling again, Mike? And then he goes from questioning what God did or said to accusation. Well, look how lazy you've been the last 2 or 3 days, this past week. I mean, nothing has really changed for man to man. I mean, really? So he's strategic about causing us to question what God says and then making accusations towards us. And then as I begin to listen and entertain these thoughts, it begins to cause weariness. The more I think about it, the more I'm wondering about it, the more wavering I become, the more I begin to doubt, right? I actually become weary. Actually this weariness begins to kind of come over me. And now I have a tendency in these moments when weariness that comes over me, I have these tendencies to reach back to what I'm comfortable with, right? Like, which is a little self-esteem. So I'll begin to go in my head, well, maybe you should just slow down, right? And that's the other thing that actually happens to me is when I go into low self-esteem, I fall into inactivity, right? I start to be inactive. I start to go, well, just chill out. Mike, maybe you just need to stop, pressing so hard. Maybe this isn't really what God said or who you are, right? That's my comfort zone. That's where I tend to reach back. And then when I become inactive, the questions brings up more questions about who I really am. So the way the enemy does it with me at about this time and sometimes in my life is causes me to question God, right? And then he makes accusations against me. And then as I become weary, or as I become wavering and I become to doubt, he begins to attack my identity by saying, oh, you sure this is really who you are, right? And I've noticed that happen right about this time, 4 to 6 weeks after basic for sure. So instead of continued steadiness of moving forward, I go into survival mode because of uncertainty. To be honest with you, I go into survival mode. I step back. I stop being active. I start to question everything. I go into survival mode. I grab onto the things in my past that used to help. So I begin to just survive, right? Every time I think of the word survive, I get the clip from Braveheart in my mind. And it's so evil. So I'm going to go through the clip, and if you want to bring it up on YouTube, you can watch it too, but I'm going to go through the clip and just show you kind of I believe, how the enemy really does approach us that are men that have a passion, that are inspiring, and that are just convicted to move forward. He tends to do this to us. And this is what he does a lot to me. You know, William Wallace started a rebellion, right? And so Robert the Bruce is going to his father, who is being hid away in a room because he's dying. And Robert the Bruce's dad is going to be dying, or he's dying, and he's going to die. He's going to be dead pretty soon. And so Robert is going to him to basically tell him what's going on. And so Robert Bruce enters the room, and his dad says, "Come, stay a while." And Robert the Bruce says, "A rebellion has begun." His dad says, "By whom?" "A commoner named William Wallace." And all of a sudden you start to see something change in Robert the Bruce's face. He starts to get excited, and he says, "Wallace, he doesn't even have a knighthood, but he fights with passion, and he inspires." Now, I don't know about you, but we walk into these retreats as a common man, a commoner, right? We're all like-hearted men going after the same things. A lot of us going after the same things, but different situations, right? And many of us walk out with a passion and wanting to inspire others with what God has done in us. I mean, that's one of the greatest things about these retreats is God reignites the masculine soul in all of us and causes us to be excited again about what God has planned for us, right? And so that's what he's grabbing onto, right? And because, why could he do this? Because he knows who he is and what he stands for. He's a son of Scotland. And there is no need for a title because it's in him. It's who he is, right? He's got a plan and a purpose. He's got a design, and he's made to be who God called him to be, right? And you and I are sons of God. We are our Father's son. I mean, come on, Abba, Father, Daddy. We are his son. We don't need a title. We don't need things, right? And if you're kind of questioning right now, you know, your identity right now, go to 1 Peter 2, 9 and 10, and just read that. That'll reignite kind of a little bit of your identity and who you are. So 1 Peter 2, 9 and 10. But let's get back to the clip. And his dad says, "And you wish to charge off and fight as he did, eh?" And William the Bruce nods like, "Yes, so would I." And as Robert the Bruce says, "Maybe it's time." And here is where the evil one steps in. His dad says, "It's time to survive." God, I just hate that scene. I hate it. It's time to survive. You're the 17th Robert Bruce, and 16 before you passed you land and title because they didn't charge in. Call a meeting of the nobles. Right then again, when he says time to survive, he stole the passion right out of his body. He stole it from his face. You can see it. The inspiration was now killed just by that word. It's time to survive. Don't do anything but what the other past kings have done, because they didn't wreck their spot. They didn't wreck their title. They didn't wreck their possessions. Don't do that, right? Nobody else did it. Past generations didn't do this, and they're doing fine. Do what others have done before you, and don't charge in. Que sera, sera. Get complacent, sit back, whatever will be, will be. In fact, you can't change anything anyways. I mean, that's basically what he's saying. Just survive. And you guys, God didn't design us to just survive. He did not. He designed us to thrive. And so when this hits me, I know it's time for me to thrive, not just survive. I've learned that when these questions start to come in, I start to waver. I start to doubt God. I start to get weary. I start to step back and reaching back for my old things that cause me to get into survival mode. I have to step it up. I have to thrive. I have to jump in. I have to move quicker. I may not see it, but I'm taking ground on the enemy, and he doesn't like it, you guys. You may not see it right now. It's only been a month and a half, but you're taking ground on the enemy, and he does not like it. That's why he's causing all these questions to come about. That's why he's causing you to waver. That's why he's causing other people to even question you, right? And so the enemy doesn't like that. And so you are actually taking ground and can't see it, which is so cool. So I have to tell myself, this isn't time to get comfortable, but to be courageous. This isn't time for me to get comfortable, but be courageous. This is the time where courage steps into play. And you go back to the scene when he says, call a meeting of the nobles, and he says, they do nothing but talk. His dad says, rightly so. They're as rich in English titles and land as they are in Scottish, just as we are. So see, for them, it's not about passion and inspiration, but titles and things, right? And so, I don't know where you're at, but then the next thing that his dad says, you admire this man, William Wallace. Uncompromising men are easy to admire. He has courage. So does a dog. I mean, you guys, he just related an uncompromising, courageous man to a dog. When uncompromising and courageous men is who God is called to be on this planet, you guys. Uncompromising when it comes to what the enemy says we should do. We're uncompromising there, all right? And we're also courageous, right? And he says it's exactly the ability to compromise that makes a man noble. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is so evil, right? And understand this, Edward the Longshanks is the most ruthless king to ever sit on the throne of England. And none of us and nothing of Scotland will remain unless we are as ruthless. So of course, what's he going to use? Fear, of course, right? But listen to me, uncompromising men are like a dog. Courageous men are like a dog. Here's uncompromising. The definition, showing an unwillingness to make concession to others. Concession to others, especially by changing one's ways or opinions. This is that point, you guys, in our life where the enemy wants us to compromise, but we need to be uncompromising. We cannot change the ways or the opinions that God spoke to us, the things he did in us at the retreat, right? We cannot compromise that anymore. We just can't. It's exactly the ability to compromise that makes a man noble. That's what his dad says. You know what the word compromise means? To compromise is to make a deal between different parties where each party gives up part of their demand. See, the enemy wants us to give up the part that God installed in us from the retreat. He wants us to give that us. So he's causing us to question. He's attacking our identity, right? He's causing us to waver, all right? Why? Because it'll be easy to compromise with him, right? He doesn't like uncompromising men, you guys. He wants guys that are going to compromise, that are going to give up part of their demand. They're going to give up a part of what God has done in their life. They're going to give up a demand or something that God has tasked us to do, right? And of course, then finally it ends with fear. I mean, the king is ruthless, so fear him because of what he may do. I mean, I don't know if you're at that spot too, where you're making changes at your job and all of a sudden you're fearful of losing your job. You've made changes with your family and towards your wife, and now things aren't seeming right about that. So the enemy's bringing fear into that. You're going to lose that. All right. I don't know what that is, but he's always going to throw fear at us too. So Joshua 1:9 says, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Come on, you guys. So here's some things to inspire you. Hopefully it helps. I want you to know that the same God that met you at the retreat and changed you is with you now as you're watching this podcast. He never leaves you or forsakes you. He isn't any different at Luther Park in Danbury, Wisconsin as he is in your home right now. That same God, that same Father who caused you to change, who gave you direction, who inspired you, who challenged you, is the same God that's sitting in the room with you right now. Nothing has changed from the retreat. Let me repeat that. I don't care how much you've messed up. I don't care how many decisions you've made since the retreat. What God did on that retreat is still the same. What he changed and what he spoke to you to do is still the same. The only thing that is happening is the enemy is now becoming more fearful of you. So he's going back to his old ways, you guys, and influencing you by causing you to question what God said and who you are, right? But I want to restate that. What God did to you is permanent. What he did to you is real. What he did to you has not changed, even if you've made some mistakes since you left the retreat. It's still there. So what I try to do in these moments to reestablish myself is to begin to confess out loud everything that God told me during the weekend, or maybe even prior things that somebody spoke into my heart or inspired me with or challenged me with. I begin to speak them out loud. I re-agree. John talks about all the time, come into agreement with. I re-agree with those things that God did and said to me on that weekend. I re-agree. I agree. I come into agreement with what God, once again, and I begin to renounce the questions that influence me to compromise with the enemy. I begin to renounce that question. No, I am lit up and on fire for God, for men. I am reestablished when it comes to my calling. I renounce that question of, are you sure that's what God did? No, I know and come into agreement that that's what God did in my life. So go into your notes, you guys. If you're in the spot where I may be, go into your notes, speak it out loud, re-agree, come into agreement with those things that your Father has truly done to you and said to you, and renounce anything that the enemy is saying to cause question of that. And so lastly, like the great man Rocky Balboa in the movie Rocky Balboa was told by the theologian Little Marie when he began to question himself on whether or not he should fight again, she said this to him: "You know who you are? That part of you that's so full of life? We all have that feeling, that fire, and don't usually get a chance to use it, and it just goes away. But you can. You've got this opportunity, so go do it. Why not? I mean, this is who you are. This is who you'll always be. And you don't move aside for nobody until you are ready to move. And this doesn't matter how it looks to other people. All that matters is how it looks to you. Rocky, Rocky, look at me. How it looks to you. And if this is something you want to do, and this is something you got to do, then you do it. Fighters fight." Hey guys, continue to fight, because that's what we are designed to do. Fighters do fight. Strength and honor. Love you guys.